Hello everyone, this is Ozic, the head English instructor here at Edu. I've been teaching for 30 years now and it's really nice to meet you. This clip is part of my series English Myths and Truths. In this series, I've divided the myths and truths of English learning into 8 key points. I'll explain everything in plain, simple English, trying to speak as slowly as possible to help your understanding. If needed, please feel free to adjust the playback speed. And of course, you can follow along with the subtitles. If you'd like, you can even set YouTube subtitles to your own language. And to explain differences with English, I use Korean as an example, but if you imagine it as your own language while watching, the ideas will click more easily. Many people create their own limitations due to misconceptions about English, and even when they want to improve, these misunderstandings often hold them back. In this video, I'll introduce the 8 most common misconceptions and clearly reveal the truth behind each one based on scientific evidence and my own real-world experience. Through this, I aim to correct these misguided perceptions about English and present more efficient ways to learn. Points 1 through 8 are organized into a total of 6 parts. The content is organically connected from beginning to end, so I recommend watching in order. However, you're welcome to select and watch specific parts based on your personal interests or current concerns. All right, let's get started. First, the idea of I study English. That idea is completely wrong. So let me ask you, why do you want to be good at English? There can be many different purposes, and of course you have your own personal reason. But regardless of the purpose, most people end up saying the same thing. I study English. And if you look at almost any textbook, you'll see this sentence. I study English very hard. Strange, isn't it?
Nope.
Because that's actually the wrong way to think about it. Now, instead of thinking just about English, let's expand the picture to language itself. There are so many languages in the world. Do they all have different purposes? To understand this, let's go back in our imagination to the primitive age, the very beginning of humanity. There was the first human on Earth. And humans are different from animals in 3 important ways. First, humans can think. This first human looked around and gave names to things. That's the sky. This is a tree. That's the sea. But then suddenly this person met a second human. Of course, this second person could think too, and he had already given his own names to things. Next, humans also have the ability to speak. But could these 2 people really understand each other? Probably not. Later, a third person appeared. Then more people came. But since no one learned language from anyone else, each person's words were different. That meant no communication at all. And if that continued, the amazing ability to think and speak would be totally useless. But humans are different in one more way. We are social beings. So people began gathering together and gradually unifying their words. That's how language started to form. This is our imagined picture of how language developed. Now let's summarize it simply. At the very beginning, only the most basic words existed. Then, over time, one simple word expanded. For example, flower eventually became rose or sunflower. Tree became pine, then big pine. And from this process, adjectives were born. After that, people started making short sentences out of 2 or 3 words. And with the growth of society, sentence structure became more and more complex. This is the basic process of language development. And to communicate more efficiently, rules also started evolving. Vocabulary, meaning, pronunciation, spelling, grammar, writing, all of them became more complex over time. But the purpose stayed the same. Communication. That's right. In the end, every language in the world exists for one reason: communication. Let's look at it in another way. Language has 4 main areas: speaking, listening, reading, and writing. And all of these are deeply connected to our thoughts. If we compare it to the body, we need 3 things: our brain, our mouth, and our ears. Speaking and listening are ways to share thoughts through sound. Reading and writing are ways to share thoughts through characters. Listening and reading are forms of input. Speaking and writing are forms of output. But here's the key. All of them are powerfully influenced by one thing: environment. environment has an enormous impact on language. Yes, humans think and speak, but that's only possible because we live in society, and society itself is a kind of environment. Here's an example. Imagine two places with the exact same landscape, but one is extremely hot and the other extremely cold. Even though the scene looks the same, the environment affects how the brain processes it, and in turn, language develops differently. Take the Inuit people in the Arctic. They live in a world constantly covered with snow. That's why their language is said to contain dozens of words for snow. But deserts? They never imagined those, so there's no word for desert. This shows us that to truly learn a language, you also need to understand the environment that shaped it. And research supports this. One well known paper in Nature says language is shaped by the environment. Another study shows that geography, identity, and history shape vocabulary. And yet another shows how culture influences how meanings develop. So, overall, ways of thinking, culture, and environment have a huge influence on how language evolves. Of course, the opposite is also true. Language itself can shape the way people think and behave. Now, let's look at the global picture. Here's a world language map. The pink areas show where English is spoken. Here's another chart. It shows the number of users of each language. English has about 1.1 billion speakers, slightly more than Mandarin Chinese. And here's another map. The dark green areas show where English is the official language. Okay, let's go back to the main point. No matter where it's spoken or how many people speak it, English is just one thing, a tool for communication. If you see English only as a school subject, you've started in the wrong direction. And that's why, no matter how much you studied, you couldn't really improve. The goal of communication was actually getting further away. So if you want to truly communicate in English, you also need to understand the cultural mindset and the environment behind it. It's the same for foreigners learning Korean. They also need to understand the Korean way of thinking and the cultural environment. Think about it. Just as Koreans don't study Korean to become fluent, so you didn't become fluent in your mother tongue by studying it, right? And here's another study to prove it. It shows that when the brain recognizes a language as a tool for communication, language acquisition becomes extremely fast and efficient. But if the brain thinks of language as only a subject to study, the learning process slows down dramatically. That's why in language learning, direction is far more important than speed. Did you learn your native language by memorizing vocabulary lists and solving test problems? Of course not. You learned it naturally by growing up inside your culture and your way of thinking. And that's the big difference between study and learn. You have to approach English the same way you learned your mother tongue. Let me emphasize this one more time. Don't study, learn it. So, what's the real difference between study and learn? Studying can be done in the short term, but it's boring. And honestly, it's not even faster. It's actually very ineffective, as you've probably noticed yourself. Learning, on the other hand, feels slower at the beginning, but after some time, it speeds up. It becomes fun and very, very effective. Most people never tried it because the slow start scared them away. In education, we call this learn and fun. And I really hope you'll experience that excitement for yourself. Now, do you remember the goals we talked about earlier? Since we've corrected our direction, we also need to adjust our goals just a little bit. Whatever your original purpose may be, if English is a tool of communication, then the real questions are, how effectively can you deliver your own thoughts? How effectively can you understand what others are saying? This is the new setting your brain needs. And you can do it because, unlike animals, humans can adjust. Now, maybe your next question is, Teacher, I have to take an English test. How can I possibly make that fun? Okay, let's face reality for a moment. Here, the blue areas on this map show countries where English is used as a first or second language. The orange areas show places with little or no English exposure. There's a reason why English has become the global common language. And yes, it's a bit harsh, but in today's world, English ability often reflects social status. Your English skills can influence your school opportunities, your job, even your lifestyle. Not a nice reality. But since we can't change it, let's use it to our advantage. let's go with the flow. Here's the problem. If you study English only for scores, it feels painful and tiring. And the harder you chase it, the faster English runs away. But if you change your perspective just a little, this test is actually checking my communication ability, then everything shifts. And from my long years of teaching, I can say with confidence, even this small shift brings huge results. Yes, higher scores will come. That's one benefit. But more importantly, instead of you chasing after English, you'll discover that English starts coming to you like it's alive. So the next question naturally becomes, how can I make English fun? What about reading? What about speaking? I want to speak naturally in English. I want to watch movies without subtitles. But how can I enjoy learning if it feels so slow? Don't worry, we're going to solve these problems one by one, step by step, starting from now. This is the second truth, and it's a very important foundation for setting your direction and for everything that follows. English and your native language are never ever one-to-one. First, imagine this. A Korean who doesn't know any English meets an American. Of course, they can't communicate. That's obvious. It's just like the primitive humans we imagined earlier. Now, let's say a Korean who studied English meets an American. Will they communicate perfectly? Well, to answer that, let's look again at the map where English is an official language, especially the US and the UK. These two countries both speak English. But can they communicate perfectly 100% of the time? Not quite. Let's take the example of a bathroom. An American visits a British friend's house and suddenly feels nature's call. He or she asks, "Where's the bathroom?" The British friend might think, "Huh? Do you want to take a shower right now?" In the US, a public bathroom is called a restroom. But in the UK, if you ask for a restroom, people may think you're looking for a place to sit and rest. On the flip side, if a Brit comes to the US and asks, "Where's the loo?" most Americans will say, "What's a loo?" One popular theory is that loo comes from Waterloo, the British interior design company. The word toilet is common in Asia, including Korea, but in the US, it feels too direct, so people avoid it. And in American homes, the bathtub and toilet are usually in one room, so bathroom is the most natural term. Of course, today, many Brits also use bathroom. On airplanes, trains, or buses, you'll see lavatory. And in Europe, WC, short for water closet, is common. But Americans almost never use WC. Here's another example. In the UK, people say, "Not my cup of tea." For example, "This song is not my cup of tea," meaning, I don't really like this song. But in the US, people just say, "Not my thing," or "I'm not into this song." That phrase comes naturally out of British tea culture, which is strong in the UK, but not really part of American culture. So, even though both countries speak English, their English isn't the same. And of course, that means your native language and English will never be the same either. Is it because the way letters are written is different? No, it's because the environment and ways of thinking that affect each language are completely different. That's clear as day. Here's another example. Look at this US map. The same drink can be called pop, soda, or even Coke, depending on the region. That shows just how strongly environment shapes language, and even the same English can be different depending on the region. Now let's go deeper. After years of studying grammar and vocabulary, you feel confident. Then you want to say, "I don't know what to say." But you want it to sound impressive. You start thinking like a grammar slave. What's the subject and verb? Should I choose a pronoun, active voice, or passive? Which word should I use? And then you proudly produce, "The door of my word is sealed." Why? Because you were trained to think English works as a one-to-one mirror with your native language, like typing it into a translator. But how do native speakers react? They think, "I've heard the Hanmoon is sealed from K-pop demon hunters." But what does that mean? The nuance is a bit different, but natives usually say things as follows. There's the word speech, so it's easy to understand. Here is a phrase, nothing to say, which is easy too. The phrase at a loss is a bit harder but understandable once you know it. But how about this? Words fail me. Most people understand fail only as not succeeding. So, words fail me might sound like words ruined me, which makes no sense. This is a very common example of knowing the words but not understanding the meaning. You can't think of fail only as not succeed, literally. Fail comes from Latin and means something is going in the wrong direction. Try to think of this as a concept, not just a simple meaning. Let me emphasize again, don't just focus on the meaning. Picture the concept clearly in your mind. For example, what does it mean when you fail an exam? You messed it up. A break usually helps you stop. So here, this means something not working properly to stop a car. In human relationships, trust is key. So this means I won't disappoint you again. Strength means physical power used to move heavy things or fight for justice. So here it may mean his strength brought his downfall, depending on the contexts. So fail means more than just not succeed. It's about going the wrong way. You probably know all these words, but if you think fail only means not succeed, you'll misunderstand or not understand at all. Now let's apply this. Take this sentence. History has failed us, but no matter. This is actually the first line of Pachinko, a best-selling novel by Korean-American author Min-jin Lee, also adapted into an Apple TV series. The words are easy, but what does it really mean? If we think of fail as wrong direction, then it means history has turned its back on us, but that's okay. This fits because history is supposed to be a record of human progress and hope. Yet the novel is about the struggles of Korean immigrants in Japan across generations. So here it means history has betrayed them, but they keep hope alive. Once your brain accepts fail as a concept, not just one meaning, you can process information more freely and communicate more naturally. That's when learning English starts to truly feel fun. Now let's check your understanding with one more example. In a Hallmark TV movie, a man and a woman meet first in their dreams, then in real life. There's a line, where words fail, music speaks. Can you catch it now? Words are for communication. So this means when words can't express my feelings, music does the job. And if you know the story context behind the scene, it becomes even easier to understand. Here's an easier example. First, listen.
Are you going to take care of your sister?
I'm gonna take care of Daddy.
Take care of. You all know this usually means to look after. But now, listen to how it's used in another context.
Take care of him. Move!
You've probably heard this a lot in crime movies. Here, take care of doesn't mean protecting or helping. It means, let's just say, to quietly bury someone underground. See, English is never one-to-one with your native language. Let me give you another example.
When you start to take those barriers away, the world is your oyster, right?
Here's the original sentence. If you translate it literally, it becomes, is this world full of one-of-sea creatures? Pretty confusing, right?
When you start to take those barriers away, the world is your oyster, right?
No matter how many times you read or hear it that way, the meaning won't make sense. But when you understand the background, suddenly it becomes clear. The world is your oyster. This phrase comes from Shakespeare. Just like an oyster can hold a pearl, the world holds endless opportunities. It means opportunities are everywhere, so don't be afraid. Go out and try new things. Don't be afraid to try new things. The world is your oyster. Here's another one. Fingers crossed that it doesn't rain on my big day. You already understand big day means an important event, like a wedding. But what about fingers crossed? This also comes from culture. The gesture comes from the shape of a cross, symbolizing prayer or hope. Crossing fingers means, I hope my wish comes true. Originally, two people crossed fingers together, but over time, people began doing it alone too. So, when your native English friend says, I have an interview tomorrow, you can send them this emoji. It's a natural and friendly way to show support. And I'm cheering for you too. You're learning English? Fingers crossed. By now, you understand that English and your native language are not one-to-one. Looking into English history helps you see this even more clearly. It not only deepens your understanding, but also makes learning English so much easier and more fun because history shaped the environment and mindset behind English. Some of you might say, Teacher, English is already hard enough now. But remember the saying, a nation that forgets its history has no future. Once you see the history behind English, you'll find learning more enjoyable. I once planned to make a full video about English history, but since so many excellent ones already exist, I changed my mind. I've promised myself to make clips only if I can create something better. Personally, I recommend the YouTube channel Studio Pirates. Their English history videos are clear, beginner-friendly, and very well made. And no, we're not connected with them. For now, let's take a short, simplified look. English evolved through four main stages: Old English, Middle English, Early Modern English, and Late Modern English. Here's a chart that shows Old, Middle, and Modern English side by side with major historical events influencing the language. It also shows where other languages left their mark. Orange represents Latin, green shows French, blue shows Germanic languages, black shows other influences. The summary: invasions. The Renaissance, Shakespeare systematized grammar for printing, Hemingway's modern English style, colonial expansion, trade, religion, and now technology and social media. All shaped English's development. English, like a living being, is still evolving today. For example, Korean words like aegyo, mokbang, and chimek have already entered the Oxford Dictionary. Even this gesture, first called K-pop hand sign and then Korean finger heart, is now spreading as a recognized English noun, and it is simply called finger heart. Of course, some Old English words disappear. For instance, by Jove. Jove was used to call upon Jupiter, but with Christian influence it got replaced with oh my God. Another example, overmorrow, which meant the day after tomorrow, also faded away. Other words simply expand their meaning. Take kiosk. Its origin came from outside, and it meant a stall or stand at first. But today, it usually means a digital information booth or touchscreen. What started as digital kiosk is now just kiosk. Here's a fun example from China. You probably all know that the two biggest players in cola are Coca-Cola and Pepsi. Coca-Cola is pronounced ke, kau, ke, ele. Pepsi Cola becomes bai, si, ke, ele, which mean the more you drink, the happier you feel. And every time you drink, everything becomes joyful, respectively. These versions were created for marketing, but they perfectly show how new words and meanings emerge. Classic language evolution in action. So if you look at this chart of language influence, it's more tangled than a spider's web. Stop the video for a sec and see if you can find out which languages have had an impact on yours. And today, because of the internet and social media, the speed of this change is only accelerating. This Korean sentence is a good example because it includes no less than 6 languages. Quite the multilingual skill. Café comes from French. Arbeit, meaning part-time job, is from German. Shampoo from Hindi. Cover is English. Ipai is Japanese. And the rest are Korean. I believe many of you also unknowingly mix words from different languages in a single sentence quite often. Now let's try a different angle. Look at this. A poem by Shakespeare is beautiful in English, but if you translate it word for word into your native language, the beauty often disappears. And there are also plenty of words in your language that just don't exist in English. That's proof that English and your language will never match one-to-one. In Korea, when English is adapted into Korean, it becomes what's called Konglish, which I personally don't think is a bad thing. On the left is the original English expression. On the right are Korean creations such as skinship. Interestingly, skinship is such a creative word that one day I believe it'll be added to the Oxford Dictionary. And beyond that, people now mix English and Korean together freely, creating new hybrid expressions. Maybe your country does the same. You probably know that languages like Janglish, Chinglish, Spanglish, and Franglish are evolving and developing as English mixes with Japanese, Chinese, Spanish, and French, respectively. Language is always creating new life. So, here's the conclusion. English and your native language have never been one-to-one in the past. They are not one-to-one now. And they never will be in the future. That's undeniable. Do you need to know every detail of English history? No. But you do need to realize this. History and environment shape mindset, and mindset shapes English. And once you realize this, you'll stop trying to translate word for word using a dictionary or translator. Yes, it feels uncomfortable at first, but that's natural and necessary. The beginning is the hardest part, but once you accept the history and environment, your English will grow fast, faster than you expect, and it will become fun. Because remember, the one true purpose of English is communication. Just as people open their hearts when someone shows interest in them, English will open its heart to you if you show interest in its background and culture. Then English won't just come to you. It will run to you. The world is your oyster. Fingers crossed. Now that we've set the right direction and built a new paradigm, let's move forward, step by step, solving your concerns about pronunciation, grammar, vocabulary, reading, and more. Thanks a ton for sticking with part 1 till the very end. If you got any thoughts or questions, just pop them in the comments and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. I've also uploaded the same video in Korean on YouTube, so if you're into Korean, go check it out. And don't worry, I'll be right here, tagging along with you every step of the journey.